Hello, and welcome to the pre-submittal presentation for the Snohomish County Food and Farming Center project. My name is Rachel Dotson, and I'm the project manager on behalf of Snohomish County Parks and Recreation. This project is a partnership between the Division of Parks and Recreation and the Office of Agriculture, which are both a part of Snohomish County's Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. This project will be the first alternative delivery project that DCNR has done, although it's not the first for the county. Because of all the complexities of the project and the site, we've selected Progressive Design Build as our delivery method. We have a few notices here. First is any information shared during this presentation is non-binding. All questions should be submitted to the Snohomish County Purchasing Department at the email shown in the third bullet here. And we highly encourage you to send those questions in as soon as possible. All questions will be answered via written addendum that will be sent out to all the firms who are registered on the purchasing portal. Our presentation today is going to go over the project location and the project overview, as well as the solicitation schedule, process, and a review of the solicitation content, and then finally the RFQ evaluation criteria. Our project site is at McCollum Park, which is just outside of Everett and Mill Creek in southwest Snohomish County. It's about a 1-minute drive east from the 128th Street exit of I-5. McCollum Park is a 78-acre public park. It's home to several active and passive recreation uses, a community transit park and ride facility, which is being reconstructed right now, or construction improvements are happening right now, the Bigfoot BMX track, and also the Northwest Stream Center, which is to the south of the site. The pool and pool house, which are the little blue buildings off to the right of the park in this picture, as well as the two existing buildings shown kind of to the left on the south side of the site, those are envisioned to be demolished as part of this project. So this site is a former Amander landfill site. The landfill was closed in 1967. It was capped with a liner and soil before being transferred to Snohomish County. There's also several critical areas and associated buffers on site. These include North Creek to the west. North Creek's a fish-bearing stream, and it has floodplain associated with that creek. We've got 2 mapped fault trace lines of the southern Whidbey Island fault zone, and several on-site wetlands that are currently being delineated. So for these next few slides, I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the project itself and the vision for the purpose of the project. So a number of years ago, the county asked the farming community, what can we do to help you be economically viable in Snohomish County? The intent was to make sure that the county is giving them all the support they need so that they can continue farming. A lot of their requests have been addressed. And the county is now down to the last 3 things that were identified as a need for the farmers. These 3 things are the overall components of the Food and Farming Center, which include 1, a food processing, aggregation, and distribution facility, 2nd, a commercial kitchen, and 3rd, a year-round indoor farmers market. You can find a little bit more information on this on the Snohomish County Parks and Recreation website. The project itself began over a decade ago, and several feasibility studies have been completed. There's been and continues to be a lot of involvement and interest from the local farmers, and they'll be included in the stakeholder group that'll have ongoing involvement in the project. So we're envisioning 1 or 2 new buildings for the Food and Farming Center. So that's to be determined in our phase 1. Scope. The county won't ultimately operate the facility, but we envision this project culminating in a turnkey lease for the operators. And we'll bring on 3 total operators, 1 operator for each of the 3 components of the Food and Farming Center. So this is discussed throughout the RFQ attachment, and this approach to bringing on the operators right now is also pretty flexible. The first component of the Food and Farming Center is the Food Processing, Aggregation, and Distribution Facility. And this is important because of the number of regulations that have come down recently, such as the Food Safety Modernization Act. It's needed, but it makes it very expensive for a farmer to put a processing unit on their own farms. And as many farms are in the floodplain, it's also really difficult to put this on their farms. So building a processing and distribution site that allows the farmers to bring their product to one location, have it all processed and distributed, it's very efficient for the farmers. So instead of having, let's say, 50 different farmers on the road driving their product to Seattle, where most of the product is sold, you'll now have just one truck on the road doing everybody's distribution. Then the farmers can get back on the farm farming. And I also want to add that this facility will focus on produce and not on meat products. Within the processing, aggregation, and distribution facility, we'll also incorporate cold storage and explore opportunities to include office space, classroom space, some kind of flexible space potentially. Next, we have the commercial kitchen. This is a facility to create value-added products from farm produce. A good example of this is a farmer who grows strawberries, but they're only ripe for a month and a half out of the year. If the farmer could take those strawberries and turn them into strawberry jam, they'd have strawberry jam to sell year-round. The jam could be sold in grocery stores because it's been processed the correct way in the commercial kitchen. Or maybe they could sell the jam in a farmer's market. Not only does this increase the income for the farmers, but it also spreads that income over 12 months out of the year. The value-added products require a licensed kitchen to be able to produce it into a product that can be sold year-round. So products like jams, jellies, and similar things need the right kind of kitchen to be processed, and this project will provide that space. The third component is the farmers market. So many farmers love to connect to the community, and it's a great opportunity for the community to talk to the growers. It's also the best local and fresh food you can find. So, however, there's typically a limited time frame when we can go to the farmers markets. Farmers grow specifically for that farmers market season, and once the farmers markets close, there really isn't a market for them to sell at. So they stop growing. But what if we went in the wintertime to the farmers market? We could have a cup of coffee, go through and buy fresh bread and all kinds of greens, as well as those value-added products like the jams we talked about. Farmers could extend their growing season later into the fall and start earlier in the spring. A lot of our farmers have hoop houses and greenhouses, which allow them to have year-round production. So a year-round farmers market is not only great for is a great opportunity for the farmers, but it's also great for the community. This slide shows an org chart of our project team. We have, as I said before, this is a Snohomish County DCNR project. They're at the top. And then we have our project champion, Linda Nunzeg, who is from the Office of Agriculture. Linda's been working on this project since its very beginning. She's our project visionary. And then there's me there in the middle from Parks and Recreation. I'll be the project manager. And then we also have Rob Marchand to the left of me on this chart. Rob's going to come in probably more day-to-day when we hit construction on the project. But Rob and I kind of tag team once we get into that construction phase. And then we also have our owner's advisor, Hill International, there in the center bottom. So the day-to-day team you would see from the county includes Linda, me, and our consultants from Hill International. And then once we hit construction, Rob's going to join that day-to-day team. We also have on board our legal counsel from Pacifica Law Group. And then we have Salmon Safe to do the watershed certification for the project for us. And then in blue here, that's our successful progressive design build team. And then we also have our 3 operators, which are shown here to the right of me on the org chart. And we're envisioning them being engaged mid to late in the design process and then through construction. And we also have a preliminary list of stakeholders here in the upper left as well. So the farmers are going to be a big part of that stakeholder group, but it will include several other groups as well. The stakeholders have been engaged in the project for many years, especially the farmers, and the county plans to refresh that stakeholder engagement process prior to releasing the RFP. So that step of the stakeholder engagement process is shown here in green. A lot of their feedback is going to help us to refine the scope that will be shown in the RFP when that is released. And then we'll also plan to get the stakeholder group prepped and prepared to launch into the design process, because they're primarily going to be engaged during the design process. These are the 3 steps shown here in blue. So we're envisioning 3 main steps or events. Once we get into design, they're going to progress from broad concepts down to the preferred option before we launch into construction. Each of these steps could include meetings, workshops, or other engagement methods. They may also incorporate presentations to the county council to provide updates. Because this isn't a typical Parks and Recreation project, we're not currently anticipating a large public process right now, but we'll provide updates to the community through the project website, the Parks newsletter, and our bi-monthly report. Once the design team is on board, the county will facilitate the events with support from the Progressive Design Build team. And then the county will also host the events, which are likely going to be on-site or at the admin building at Willis Tucker Park, which is where Parks and Recreation for Snohomish County lives. So this is all very preliminary, but I wanted to give you an overview of what we're envisioning for how we engage those stakeholders. This slide is a brief overview of our project funding. We currently have secured funds to cover phase 1 for the project, and those are coming from grants and other local funds. For phase 2, or the construction phase, we've started to do fundraising and grant applications for those funds. There's a couple of different requests currently under review for that. So for any additional remaining construction money that does not come from local funds or from grants, the county will issue a non-voted bond to cover those costs. That closes out the project overview section. We received PRC approval on June 22nd, and the presentation and other information for that process can be found on the website listed in the second bullet. We're currently seeking responses for this RFQ to provide Progressive Design Build services to design and construct the Food and Farming Center project. So check out RFQ Attachment A for further information. All right, so this slide shows an overview of our procurement schedule. I wanted to point out that questions are due on August 17th, and we encourage you to get those questions in as soon as possible. The RFQ responses are due on Thursday, September 7th. These dates are subject to change, but any changes to those solicitation dates will be communicated through a written addenda and posted on the purchasing portal. This slide shows an overview of the solicitation process. So you'll need to register in the Snohomish County Purchasing Portal in order to download the RFQ documents. And you can submit questions to purchasing@snoco.org anytime before the August 17th due date. And a reminder that you should not contact me, Linda, or our representatives from Hill or any of the other consultants directly, because any unauthorized contact could disqualify you from participation. If there are any addenda, they'll be posted to the purchasing portal. And your responses are due on September 7th, and they can be submitted electronically or by hard copy, although we do prefer electronic submittals. So for more information on that process, please take a look at the instructions in section 7 of the RFQ. Okay, so the solicitation request includes the RFQ and all of its attachments. The RFQ has selection criteria that can be found in Section 9, and this is a two-phase solicitation process, and the future phase, or RFP, information can be found in Section 20. In addition to the RFQ, ensure that attachments are downloaded from the purchasing portal. These include attachments A through G, shown here. Attachment A is where you'll find information such as our design ideas for the project. B and C are the draft form of contract and general conditions for the Progressive Design Build project. Attachment D includes the draft scope of work for Phase 1, which is the validation and design, and also Phase 2 for construction. Attachment E is a list of the county provided information. The county provided information will be in a separate folder on the purchasing portal in the same general location. Attachment F is your submittal response packet, which we'll review shortly. Okay, and then lastly, the project is partially funded through Housing and Urban Development, or HUD's Community Project Funding Program. This is a federal grant, and the federal requirements linked to those grant funds are in Attachment G. So there will not be a site walk during the RFQ phase, although you're more than welcome to visit the park during regular park hours and enter any of the spaces that are open to the public. We'll have a site walkthrough during the RFP phase of this solicitation in the fall. The counties provided supplemental information and also the SFLLL form, which is linked to that HUD grant. These are needed in the minimum requirement section of your responses. These can be downloaded on the purchasing portal within a separate folder. So these items include a current title report for McCollum Park, the limits of landfill liner and depth of refuse map, critical area site plans, a feasibility study for McCollum Park and the Food and Farming Center here at the site, and a recent eco-charrette report that we did last year. So the county is also currently working with firms to prepare a geotechnical report and also a topographic survey. And that topographic survey is going to include wetland delineation. These are both expected to be available to the proposers in October. So in time for the RFP to be released, we should have those items attached. All right, so the corresponding sections for each of the response elements shown in this table are included in Attachment F. The following slides include a high-level review of each of the response elements, or RFQ evaluation criteria. These are sections A through O, which are shown here. So please refer to Attachment F of the RFQ for more information on these elements. There's a 15-page limit on the RFQ submittals, and the items here, A through H, are excluded from the 15-page limit for your responses. And we'll go into those in a little more detail. For the minimum qualifications, please submit any documentation related to these items that are listed here. These will not be counted towards the page limit. Please also ensure you have included the minimum qualifications checklist from Section 9B. If these items are not filled out correctly, or if you don't meet the minimum qualifications, your submittal will not proceed in the evaluations. Next, we have demonstrated history and experience. So Section F is for you to show us your team's experience, your projects of similar scope and complexity. And what constitutes similar scope and complexity, these criteria are listed in Section 9F3 of the RFQ Attachment F. In your response, you'll include an Attachment B, which is an identification of projects table, and this should be an 11 by 17 page size and no more than 2 pages. These 2 pages for the identification of projects table are not counted towards the 15-page limit. Section G is for you to tell us about your experience working on projects with site contamination, landfill, fault zones, environmentally critical areas, other sensitive areas, or similar things to McCollum Park. The next section is specialized expertise, and this is your opportunity to tell us about your experience on projects designing and constructing for specialty operations, similar to our approach to having our 3 operators for the Food and Farming Center. Also your alternative delivery experience and your experience with sustainable design and projects with LEED certifications. Next, for the experience of key personnel, we'd like to see your organization chart, and we'd like to know more about your key personnel. These should include the design build project manager, phase 1 and 2 project managers, the construction superintendent, design manager including design and engineers of record, the technical environmental lead, and the food processing facility subject matter expert. In L, all key team members should have a resume, and the resumes are not included in the 15-page limit. For section M, we'd like to hear more about your past utilization of diverse businesses, including DBEs and SBEs on similar projects. We'd also like to hear about your approach to identifying, recruiting, and contracting with DBEs and SBEs on alternative delivery projects. Lastly is the overall response. Your overall response, completeness, and comprehensiveness are part of the scoring criteria. Please also include the non-disclosure request form from section 9.0. This form is not counted towards the 15-page limit. So that concludes the presentation today. Thank you for joining in. If you have any questions, please submit them to the purchasing@snoco.org email and reference the solicitation number in the subject line, which is RFQ-23-009SB. On behalf of Snohomish County Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, I want to thank you for your interest in this Food and Farming Center project, and we are looking forward to reviewing your submittals.